Welcome Rotarians and guests to our Monday downtown virtual meeting. I'm Kurt Laudenbach, the current treasurer of the Downtown Sioux Falls Rotary Club. Jeff Griffin, president and CEO of the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, is joining us to discuss numerous topics, including how he's settling into his new role, what the next initiatives are, the Chamber's plan, and how they're assisting Chamber members as they navigate through, the pandemic. Jeff is a husband and father of three and finds things to enjoy every week in his new home state. And I will add that Jeff is a fellow Buckeye, went to the Ohio State University as I did. And so Jeff, a special pleasure to introduce you here today. Jason Herbold is moderating today and will do a fine job as he has been all along and in keeping with the Rotary values here, the tenets of the Rotary four-way test. Of the things we think, say, and do, first, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Thank you for joining us today, and I'll now turn it over to Jason. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Jeff, it is a great privilege to have you joining us here today. I've been anxious to visit with you about what you're seeing as the CEO of the Greater Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce. And, you bring a whole new perspective to Sioux Falls because now you're new to the community. And Sioux Falls, the people in Sioux Falls are now just finally starting to get to know you, and you come into the city and then we go on lockdown. I'm sure it made things a little difficult for you, or greatly difficult for you to get to know people. But can you just as we get started here, just take a moment to just introduce yourself to the viewers here today?
Right. So thank you, Jason. Actually, I had a couple months before the mid-March shutdown of everything, and I overlapped for just a week with Dr. Kapaska. And man, he had me working 12-hour days, just introducing me to everyone. And so people have been really, really great to get to know. So anyway, Jeff Griffin. I'm moving here from Peoria, Illinois, originally from Ohio. And my wife, Rosie, we've been married 24 years. We have 3 kids. I'm a Rotarian. I've been 10 years a Rotarian, so this will be my 3rd Rotary Club, and that membership is in process, hopefully approved. We're moving 3 kids here. I have a 19-year-old Max. He's a sophomore at Xavier University. 18-year-old Alex, who's going to be at the CTE program here in Sioux Falls, and my daughter Camilla will be a sophomore at Washington High School. So interesting, at Ohio State University, I actually studied criminology. So I have a bachelor's degree in criminology, and then I studied social work at the University of Texas at Arlington. So I have a master's in social work. And I spent about 15 years in Ohio, our home state, my home city is Canton, Ohio, working for a private child care agency. And we provided, in lieu of incarceration, services and treatment foster care and schooling for juvenile felons across the state. So it was my job to go in and establish programs in neighborhoods where they, maybe different temperatures of whether or not they wanted juvenile felons programming in their neighborhood, but we sold the programs well and served the kids well. And simultaneous to working in that career, I was on Worcester City Council in Worcester, Ohio, and Chamber of Commerce job came open. And at the time, obviously our city, like most cities, worked well with the Chamber of Commerce. And I was approached by the board to see if I'd have interest in it. And like many, I never even thought of the Chamber of Commerce as a career. It's more of, I just thought of it as a place that cut ribbons and, did some ceremonial fun stuff in the summers. But it's nonprofit management is what I had done, is what my training is. And I really like the economic development side and community development side of it. So that's how I got into the Chamber of Commerce field. And I've been doing it for 10 years and I absolutely love it. We have 2,000 members here. They represent about 85,000 employees. So I would not do well, all respect to any doctors or optometrists, but I would not do well in the same thing every day. I'm glad there are people that are, but working with the multitude of businesses and the community as a whole is what I really love to do.
That is good to know. It's new to me, your background before you got into chamber work, and I think that's going to lead into just some conversation that we're going to have here today. So I'm thrilled about that. So Jeff, the Greater Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce has a strong history in Sioux Falls. going back many, many decades. However, it is primarily known, by its members and those that are active in the business community, and perhaps not as much as understood with majority of our citizens. Can you first provide background into the recent name change and rebranding that has taken place, and then go into an overview of why the Chamber is so important and the work that it does, and how it is more than just a place to go cut ribbons?
Right. So the branding, the community branding, which is actually separate from the name change, they just kind of lined up in unison. But the community branding was a project that was well underway by the time I got here, and very well done. Partnered with Jenny Doyen led our team here at the Chamber, and partnered with the city and the Development Foundation, Experience Sioux Falls, to get that across the finish line, and of course Forward Sioux Falls. So the idea to have that monogram for us as a community that's then represented in different ways and different colors. COVID has set a little bit of that launch back, but not devastating. We have some new gear coming for our Chamber staff, for example, that's going to represent the logo. But having that shared visual for our community really is a bigger deal than just the artwork behind it, because not all communities share that with their city, and all of us that are bringing business to town, growing businesses in town, and getting to the tourism and everything else that goes along with it. The name change to move from the Sioux Falls Area Chamber of Commerce to the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce. Honestly, it wasn't a priority one for me when I got here, but when in talking to folks, the subject came up. I brought it up, full disclosure, and Greater gives us more alignment with our peer chambers across the country. So represents, first of all, our larger geographic spread. We have no geographic boundaries as a Chamber of Commerce. We are the largest Chamber of Commerce in the state, and accessible to, want to advocate for the entire state. Pretty unique. And I don't say that in a dismissive or cocky way. The smaller chambers of commerce are huge partners of ours, but to say Greater is a better representation of our geography and our robust programming. So mostly the latter of the programming to be recognized. There's only 50 largest chambers in their state in the union, and we're one of them. So we're amongst some great talent, and it better represents what we do.
I see. We're going to quickly pivot to really what's been going on here over the last few months. People don't need a reminder that lots been happening. But like the rest of our economy countrywide, our economy locally has also came to a halt, and we're starting to come back out of it now. But what were you hearing from the business community, specifically chamber members? And then what steps did the chamber take to help its members navigate through that crisis?
Yeah.
And what's going on now?
Right. So I'm good. Before I answer that, I want to lay a little more foundation to. I didn't want to just get hung up on the name change, about my philosophy of a chamber of commerce, because earlier I mentioned it being a ribbon cutting social donut club when I was asked to consider it as a career. I say this with it's hard to do this online because I wish we could have, but people can follow up with questions later. No, I get that. But the deal is, and I'm accused of being dramatic sometimes when I say this, but when you look at the history of our country and the world for that matter, chambers of commerce actually initiated in the 1500s in France. But a chamber of commerce here in this country was first formed in New York, and it was in response. There was a meeting on October 31st, 1765, and it was at the New York Merchants, and it was at a coffee house. And 200 merchants got together and in unison said, we are not going to trade with England until the Stamp Act is revoked. And if you know your history, which Rotarians all do, the Stamp Act was put in place to help Great Britain finance the 7 Years' War and coming out of that. So just taxation, taxation, taxation. And sometimes when we get into discussion of taxation and politics these days, I think it becomes a trivial topic, and it's not. We still, if you believe we don't need advocacy for representation in our tax system, you're becoming too complacent, because we definitely need it, and at a local, state, and national level. And that's part of much of what drew me to South Dakota is the tax structure here and so forth. So the freedoms to do business, the freedoms we enjoy, are chambers of commerce in this country have a great deal to do with that history. And because they're groups of voluntary, nobody has to join the Chamber of Commerce. They voluntarily send us their investment dollars, and we promote the city with them. They don't have to do that. So it's very important that we keep a focus on the importance of what we do. I get the opportunity to work a great deal with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, and I've been able to work internationally a bit. And you want to see people appreciate democracy and freedom to do business. I got to work with some female entrepreneurs in a foreign country, in a country that's not real receptive to females in the workplace. And that was eye-opening, because a lot what we take for granted in this country should not be taken for granted. So that's kind of where my heart is with the Chamber of Commerce. I still do the ribbon cuttings and enjoy those, but that's symbolic of the deeper work that we do. So to answer your question, this is our chamber's second pandemic. I've been around quite a while. So the Spanish flu back in 1918, our chamber was around for that. And when things started to shut down, actually we were one of the first when we had to cancel the St. Patrick's Day parade. Was that week when the NBA and NCAA and all that was shutting down. There was justifiably a lot of uncertainty. I don't want to say panic, but what are we going to do type of thing. And businesses, obviously, those first few weeks had no choice but to shut. And that response, if you try to remember where we all were with the overwhelming, the fear of the hospital systems being overwhelmed and all that, we had to stop that spread and flatten the curve and all of that. And it's been successful thus far here in Sioux Falls. So as it came time to start looking at opening up, we were very much in conversation with Mayor Ten Haken and his team, and he had fantastic openness to our feedback. I had some members calling and saying, you need to demand that we open up and this, that, and the other. Well, I don't really, if people are looking for someone to fight publicly, that's not me. I'll have conversations with folks on advocacy efforts and do that. But Mayor Ten Haken was very responsive, as was City Council. And you'll see now we've ushered in and they put in some guardrails that have allowed businesses to open back up. So when we had the phone, we'd even had people joining the Chamber of Commerce because they saw what we were doing and wanted to be a part of that, which is very much appreciated. We started this Spark initiative, which is meant to be a short-term spark for our economy. And it was a conversation between the mayor, Bob Munt of the Development Foundation, and myself. And what we did is wanted to harness the energy that we had from the businesses coming together. And Spark had developed into three subcommittees. They were reviving local business, which were like retail and restaurants, recharging hospitality, and then assessing key industry clusters, which are our banking and manufacturing and so forth. So the retail, Dan Geese led that. He's the manager of Empire Mall. So we had downtown retail involved with that, larger retail, and what seems like simple information to be sharing with one another, personal protection equipment and hours of operation and foot traffic. Businesses were able to compare notes and see what was working best. And we've also been able to keep our finger on the pulse of the tax burden and tax consequences, because we knew there would be some, but we've been able to really quantify that so that we have a barometer for the recovery. The tourism aspect of Spark has been, I know I was out yesterday, my daughter and I did the bike trail. We hadn't done that yet. That is a fantastic element of Sioux Falls, one of the many that I'm learning about.
It is.
It is, but we're encouraging staycations or South Dakotans to stay in South Dakota, enjoy what South Dakota has to offer this summer. And we're also bringing some events, even from other states that are under more restriction now, and encouraging that. And then the larger industry, of course, have separate needs about their larger workforces and how to monitor the COVID and so forth. So that's Spark really in a brief nutshell.
Okay. How is the Spark initiative taken hold so far? How does the group who are leading that effort, how do you feel about that? And how are you going to measure progress as the months and years go on?
Yeah, so our engagement has been outstanding. Actually, quite frankly, the biggest problem I have is I have more people that want to be involved. That's not a problem. We want more people involved, but the committee work is really wrapping up with recommendations going in. So we've been able to secure some financing for some of the promotion. If you've seen the Get Out There ads going out to encourage people to be out and to be safe while they're out, and also the tourism piece. So really the way we're going to measure success, the best option we have is that tax revenue, which includes the retail sales tax, as well as the heads in beds hospitality taxes, which we collect, which was obviously a huge hit for our local convention visitors bureau and Experience Sioux Falls, but nationwide it was to be expected. So we'll monitor that. We're also talking about opportunities to visit with other communities to get their input, maybe visit them, do some field trips to other communities and bring communities to us to get some better ideas. But I have to tell you, and I'm sorry, it's hard for me not to ramble on usually, but being in a room by myself on a laptop increases my chances. Saturday night, my daughter and I were downtown for the movie. Field of Dreams was shown there outside. And holy smokes, the foot traffic out was really incredible to me. And here's where I get incredible to the point that some may feel like, oh, we aren't social distancing enough. And I don't know what the right answer is with that. We have our suggestions in place, because we're going to start doing ribbon cuttings in person more, and want to talk about some more in-person events. But I was really encouraged to see folks that were out and about enjoying themselves. And that movie, there's plenty of room for people to social distance for that.
Your history lesson on the foundation of the Chamber of Commerce and the importance that the Chamber plays when it comes to tax policy, but just business policy in general, is something that I don't think is as readily understood at least by people in the community that are not part or members of the Chamber of Commerce.
Right.
So I want to talk about that a little bit. Public policy is just so important, and people just don't realize how important it is sometimes. Can you tell us how the Chamber is active in public policy? What role it plays, and how members and citizens can learn more about the positions that the Chamber takes on issues?
Yep, sure can. And first of all, I don't want to lose the opportunity of what you just said. If you're not a member of the Chamber of Commerce and aren't as familiar with some of this, we'd love to have you. And I say that right now we're providing resources for the entire community. And if folks aren't a part of the Chamber of Commerce, I really think for the modest investment that it is, you get a lot of bang for that buck. But I don't want to get into a sales pitch, but I know who you are. And and if we're not getting you to join us, I'm doing something wrong that I want to correct. So I want to make sure everyone knows what we're doing. But even our members ask the same question. And it's really specific to public policy, which I'm going to stick to your question, is one of the many things we do, but the public policy, and I'm going to admittedly read some of this because these numbers are so impressive. Not only do we have a staff member, Justin is at every school board meeting, every city council meeting, and that's a big commitment right there, just to do that. And that's to support business, to be there even when something magnificent or huge is not happening, but to keep our finger on the pulse. This afternoon for the school board meeting, Justin and I will both be there because I'm going to roll out the school redistricting map. And I think it's important that the school board hear from us that we appreciate their work with this. It's an emotional, tough decision. And all of this is part of quality of life. So I want to be there to help reinforce that. But 2020 legislative at the state, the Chamber supported 500 bills, tracked and monitored. There were 500 bills, tracked and monitored 100 and advocated for 40. And at the highlight, the biggest one victory of this session would have been SB 70, which is the Spanish driver's test. And just recently, someone who I thought followed us pretty well asked me, did that pass? And I thought, oh, yes, of course, it passed. And after multiple years of it being worked on. And that is a huge economic issue. My father-in-law moved to this country from the Dominican Republic and didn't know English and went to medical school. So we have folks here who are conversational in the language. They may not be able to read yet or take the test, but if we get them a foothold into the work environment with the CDL, for example, that progression is going to happen more quickly. So I'm very proud that the state legislature was able to notice that difference. And we also, the scorecard, which monitors the votes of the representatives and senators, and we publish this scorecard, which is really working. And we know it's working because the number of legislators scoring pro-business is increasing, and they're paying attention to it. They know when it's released. I know Deborah Owen's phone rings off the hook in anticipation of that scorecard coming out. And it's real important for a chamber of commerce to have the courage to take stands when others may not, because this is where the rubber hits the road. And it's where chambers sometimes get skittish about, are we going to offend this person, not offend that person? But I've always thought I'd rather lose a member for doing something than lose a bunch of them for doing nothing. So we put our research into it. The Issues Management Council vets them. Our board takes it very seriously. So when we make a decision, it's very well thought out.
That is a great tie into the follow-up question I had in regards to the public policy question. So help us understand. So who within the chamber reviews the bill? Because there were 500 bills.
Yeah.
You monitored 100 of them. You advocated, if I took notes right, for 40 of them. So who in the chamber reviews the bills and makes the determinations as to the position that the chamber will take on issues? There are many of them that are pretty obvious which position would be pro-business or pro-business, but I don't know if that's the case for all of it. Do you get guidance from the national and the state level, or is it a local group that sits in a room and sort of vets these out? How does that work?
Right. So a little of both. We're very fortunate that the Forward Sioux Falls campaign funds public policy for our efforts. So we have Deborah Owen overseeing the public policy, and she's a chamber employee, but she's working for the community in a pro-business. And then Justin and Teresa, her staff members, support that work we do, from everything from our trips to Sioux Falls Day in Pierre and the ongoing advocacy. So to answer your question, when I have a question about a bill, Deborah's my immediate resource, and that's her responsibility. She's very good at it. We have a lobbyist that we contract with that helps supplement our information. On the state level, we have access to the governor's office very easily, and the State Chamber of Commerce helps us with information, and the same at the federal level. The U.S. Chamber is a huge resource in that regard. So maybe, I'll use a local example. For example, I mentioned the business restrictions, that work. That was Deborah going through resolutions, pointing out pros and cons, and then we'd assemble, just she and I and our board chair, Bobby, got together with there was nothing unusual about a Chamber of Commerce saying we support reasonable efforts to get businesses back open. Wanted to affirm that with the mayor. One example now would be the medical marijuana and recreational marijuana, which will be on the ballots. We're starting that work now, or will be on for consideration. We're starting those efforts now, and just last week had a medical marijuana debate, pro and con, brought to the IMC for their review, and then they'll send a recommendation to the board, and then the board will determine the position that the Chamber of Commerce takes.
I see. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
And then something ongoing, the Spanish, I don't want to let go of that because that was a huge effort. That got down to even the point of we completely separated from an immigration issue, which is not an immigration issue, completely separate. But the payment of how the tests are going to be paid for the technology. And we were able to quickly work with the community foundation and secure funds for that to happen. So it took that roadblock out of the way for the state as well.
It's going to be interesting. I'm not asking you the question. I'm just discussing. Spanish is only one of many, many, many languages that are spoken in Sioux Falls and even across the state of South Dakota.
Yep.
So I'm really excited to see how well this works. So we can pay attention to the other communities that are out there that we'll have to be thoughtful about as time goes on.
Yeah.
South Dakota and thereby Sioux Falls is heavily reliant upon the ag industry. And you know as well as anybody that times are tough for our producers. And is also impacting those businesses, agribusinesses that are serving those producers, members of the Chamber of Commerce, both here and across the state. How does the Chamber promote and advocate for those directly involved with agriculture?
Right. So we have an agribusiness division. I mean, in our bylaws, we identify and prioritize agribusiness for our community and state. So Holly Rader is our director in that area. So it's obviously not new. We're not new to the game with that. With COVID and specifically, Smithfield interruption would be probably the prime example everyone would think about. The disruption that caused to the entire Corn Belt with the product supply chain and so forth is astronomical. So at the same time, we had small businesses working with banks for paycheck protection. We had the ag professionals needed to have the same resources of each other and connection with our federal leaders. And I have to say, our Senator Rounds, Thune, and Congressman Johnson are on top of it. And whether you agree with them or disagree with their position, they spend time with us. And we have very regular contact with them to keep the issue on the street at their in front of their desks so that they can make the proper decisions. So the aid programs available to agribusiness and so forth during this time, Holly and her committees oversee communicating that out, because just like any small business, maybe even more so, our farmers are out working. They don't have time necessarily to do the research, but if you know farmers, they are a very intelligent group of people and very astute politicians, and they keep a sharp pencil. So as much research as we can provide for them to make their life easier and get that spread around the group, the better.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Turning to something that is front and center right now. The tragic death of George Floyd has sparked a reaction in this country, and it's not letting up. Rightfully, it has caused people and businesses to look within, so meaningful change can really begin to take place now. What ideas do you have for the Chamber, City of Sioux Falls, and the rest of the business community that could help in that effort?
Yeah. So this has been something discussed a great deal. I'm not hesitating because I lack an answer. I'm hesitating because I'm trying to figure out where to start.
It's
because
tough.
It's beyond, yes, it is beyond tough to have this conversation because of what we saw happen to George Floyd. It's just sickening to see that on tape and to see our country once again going through this debate. And as a Chamber of Commerce, I mean, we've been around over 100 years, and our Chamber of Commerce wants diversity. We want to encourage people to move here, to grow businesses here. But chambers of commerce don't necessarily have a great track record themselves of being diverse. And I think some of that is a product of our nation's history. And Alex Ramirez, who I know is a fellow Rotarian, not this year, but next, he will be the first person of color to chair this organization, which is, it's not unusual. And I'm not saying the chamber needs to apologize for that. Part of the history of our country has been how to get people of color involved in leadership roles. I spoke to some Black leaders in our community last week, and they kind of joked about how many boards they're invited to be on. And that's not the solution they want. They want the solution, and we should all want this, that the Black Lives Matter campaign is not in conflict with this notion of all lives matter. It's a core human right of what we're dealing with here right now, but an unjust criminal justice system. Now, when asked what's the chamber going to do about it, I think chambers of commerce should never be relieved of their obligation to lead during any time. And this is historic times. We're leading right now. But we have members in this space right now that we're going to help them, do the work they normally do, promote that work. I want, for me to say I want more minority-owned businesses to be part of the Chamber of Commerce is just kind of, I don't call it lip service, but what does that mean? What am I willing to do to make that happen? And there are groups of minority-owned, there's been Hispanic groups, Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, for example, or others. It's not as simple as to say, oh, you guys should just be part of our Chamber of Commerce. We would all just love that. They're different, and that's okay. We have a young professionals group that's different. We have an agribusiness division that's different. So it's okay to have these differences, and it's wrong for me to assume that I can just go to a minority-owned group of businesses and say I know what's best for them and they should just join our Chamber of Commerce. But what we want is that conversation of inclusion. And I do believe, I've been talking a lot with friends recently, and I do believe our nation is at a different point of this conversation to really own the history of our nation. And what does that mean? Why would a United States African-American senator be stopped going into the Senate with his Senate lapel pin on 3 times in his time as a United States senator? I don't know what it's like to get pulled over 2 times in one night, for having air freshener hang. It doesn't mean my heritage is, my wife's the daughter of Dominican immigrants, and I'm the grandson of Italian immigrants, and they had challenges on the way here. So the Black Lives Matter doesn't dismiss any of that my family went through, but it's different. It is the only story in American history that has created this level of injustice. And as a Chamber of Commerce, while we let others in the country and the state know we are for inclusion, we are for diversity, we have to live that, and I have to be willing to listen to folks where they are and not bring or impose my will upon them. Because quite frankly, we need more diversity as in our membership. I know that, and I want that to happen. But that doesn't mean I need other groups to give up their group. They can be a part of us without giving up anything else. We have an idea. The Big Table event is going to happen at the end of July 30th. And there'll be more information on that released to the Chamber website and other websites. And it's an idea that I actually, when I was in Peoria, we stole it from Columbus, Ohio Foundation, who's been doing a Big Table now for 5 years. And basically what it is just a community-owned event or events. When you come to a Big Table, you're expected to bring something to share, and we're expected to build a bigger table, not higher walls. And in Peoria, we did one around entrepreneurship, diversity, workforce development. I attended the ones in Columbus, Ohio, and they had them everywhere. There was one in a women's prison, for example, and I went to one in a food desert that was the topic of their Big Table. Quad Cities has done it as well. But Tamian Dysart, through the Sioux Empire Leadership Group I'm a part of, really grabbed that bull by the horns, and we're going to push through and have our first. It's been impeded a bit because of the COVID, and I'm going to have a huge in-person event, but we're going to have an event and get this, make this a real part of what we do.
Oh, I love that. Jeff, I really, really appreciate it. I can tell you're passionate about this just by listening to you talk about this issue. And so I am thrilled that you are that passionate. And I have no doubt that Chamber is going to be a part of an overarching solution to this issue. At least in our, so
you're welcome. I think, for decades now, we've all been going to mandatory prevention of sexual harassment training, mandatory sensitivity in the workplace training. These things have a role. I'm not saying they don't, but we need to get past the veneer of these conversations. I was fortunate to have a lunch with Dusty Johnson last week and some others, and we need federal solutions. There should be a federal requirement that when use of force, that needs reported to the FBI, things like that. History has proven civil rights legislation is important, but the change has to happen amongst Rotarians and amongst the school, the PTOs and so forth. Because if we're just gonna do the veneer, we're not gonna move this forward. And I was talking to some friends Friday, so I don't mean to trivialize any of this. I always have to give a qualifying statement, but much of what we're doing with this COVID is we're putting on masks and see hand sanitizer everywhere. And I kind of drew the comparison of if we're just going to do that stuff with this race discussion, we're not getting to the issue. We need a vaccine for the COVID. We know that. But in the meantime, what happens? Well, I go to the coffee shop and my barista serves me my coffee with her mask on and proceeds, to put the lid on by rubbing her thumb around the whole thing. So she's got the mask on, but I'm still not protected from COVID. A grocery store has converted their salad bar to a complete buffet of sugar. So stay healthy, right? And I know we're doing those things, but those are visual things. This race issue, we need to do more than the mandatory stuff or the window dressing stuff, because this is an issue we all need to own.
That's right. The chamber I can just see the chamber playing such an important role in this effort. When I first came to Sioux Falls, I was new. I didn't grow up here. What do? You join the chambers. You join the Chamber of Commerce. You start going to ribbon cuttings. You attend the monthly events, and it becomes the way you integrate yourself with the community. You learn and you meet people. You get acquainted with people that become your mentors, your close friends. And boy, the chamber could play such an important role in this effort. So again, I am thrilled that you are as passionate as you are, Jeff. Thank you. You've been in Sioux Falls now for a few months. Please tell us, what are your first impressions? And how do those things help us in recruiting businesses and talent to come to Sioux Falls? What are those impressions?
So I started January 20th. My first visit to Sioux Falls, South Dakota was first week of November 2019. And the way that life lined up, I had been in Tokyo on a business recruitment trip. I landed in Chicago on the Saturday and I flew to Sioux Falls on a Sunday. So even with the Japan jet lag, landing here in Sioux Falls, I was immediately blown away, honest to God. And I travel to communities, and the cleanliness of the community, the friendliness of the hotel staff, the airport staff, you don't see that in every community. And it really does jump off the page when you visit Sioux Falls, it really does. The art scene is so cool. I already said cleanliness, but I'll say it again. It's unusual to see litter. There's a real pride. I mentioned my daughter and I did the bike trail yesterday, the amount of people out, and I heard a lot of on your lefts. There's a lot of people that ride their bikes faster than my daughter and I, but they did it courteously, right? just a very friendly environment. And I have yet to meet, and maybe no names please, but I've really yet to meet a pretentious person. There doesn't seem to be a tolerance for that. And even when I stub my toe on new things that I don't know, I'm corrected, but I've never been corrected so politely than I am by my leadership that I have here.
So you expressed the cleanliness, the friendliness, art scene, workforce development's a big deal right now. You know that well. We are competing in an ever-changing world and economy. How do we take those things and market it so we continue to be as successful in the next few decades as we have?
Well, one thing I left off in my first impressions list was, I think I have the percentage right, with the school levy for the new 85% in favor of, something like that. I've never heard of such a thing. I've never heard of anything really passing by that percentage. And that is a huge commitment to education. And that's the number I use a lot. So to see how tied in the community is with the education, and to have the local community college resource, the CTE, Southeast Technical, and the university system here, it really is tied well together. You mentioned workforce. Every city in America is coming with a workforce strategy. There's nothing unique about that. The question is how do you make yours unique? And we do that. I reached out to some friends in another state today. Their GED testing centers aren't going to be open until August. Ours are going to be open in July. And we're making arrangements or plans for them to bus people to South Dakota to take their GED test. And while they're here, I just might happen to slip a job fair in on them to see if we need workforce here. But we have to do creative things like that. Housing is a huge issue. For someone like me to relocate their family is a challenge, and there's a lot of work that goes with it. And I'm blessed to have a lot of support mechanisms in place to help with that. Some more blue collar jobs, that they need those same resources to help acclimate them to a new community. If we want to bring people workforce trained ready to be a welder here, to be these trades jobs that pay a great living, but the employers aren't traditionally helpful. It hasn't been their role to help with that moving process. And it has to be we have to have a real answer for that. And affordable housing. The nice thing about having such a robust, I did just buy a house, by the way, we moved in last week, thank God, because they're going quickly around here. So that's fantastic to have a robust housing market. The challenge has become to make sure we have affordable housing for our working. I'm not talking about folks that are subsidized. I'm just talking about the working poor.
Yeah. Along those lines, but I'm going to flip the coin here. You're new to Sioux Falls, and you are not completely biased yet. Although listening to you talk about Sioux Falls, you're starting to sound as biased as I am and others are. And to our ability to continue to grow at the pace we have experienced in recent history. In your mind, I want to kind of talk about each of these three separately. But what are the top three challenges that you see for our area, and what steps are currently being taken to address those challenges? The top three.
So I apologize if this seems redundant. These are the three I wrote down. In the course of our conversation, they've kind of bubbled up a little bit. So I guess we'll just enforce some of them. The workforce and education is a priority. College education is changing. Kids' paths to career is changing. You see some young people who want to make an investment and be an entrepreneur without burdening themselves with $200,000 worth of four-year college debt. But we have these different solutions for folks. We need to make sure we're advertising our post-education opportunities. And we can do that. We have so many members of the Chamber of Commerce. I need to, and willing to help. Right? I said previously, one of my biggest challenges is having enough room for everyone to help. But I know if I wanted a member to mentor somebody that came in new or make them feel welcome, we'd have a tremendous amount of resources for that. So I use my college son as an example. Relocated here from Illinois. At first, like, why do we have to move? And my answer is, he goes to school in Cincinnati at Xavier. What's it matter to him? But Illinois has some friends and so forth. He's been up to visit. I've sent him the numbers on Sioux Falls top 10, whatever list you want to mention. And man, he really warmed the idea of Sioux Falls being a possible place for him to come after graduation from college. We need to make that story more relevant, because coming from Illinois, and I'm sorry if there's some friends from Illinois listening or tuning in on this, they are hemorrhaging because of tax burdens and pension systems, and people are fleeing the state, and they're looking for a good place to go. And, South Dakota offers that. Now, with that comes number 2 on my list, and that would be maintaining our independent nature, self-reliance, that the government is not there to provide a nanny state for us, and never was intended to and never should be. South Dakotans have a very unique perspective on that, for certain. And I think that is a great skill, a great quality as human beings, that we let go too often. It is our responsibility to take care of our business, our families, and our neighbors. And if we have a healthy work business environment, then those other things are going to happen naturally. So the tax burden in South Dakota, I can't call it a burden, the tax relief that South Dakota offers can be a fragile one if you import too many people that have been somewhere else that have, I'm not bringing those solutions with me, but if you let some of that systemic quality of life stuff erode with population growth, then you end up with a tax burden that you don't want. Every time I go to the store, I went shopping yesterday for some stuff and I pay 3% less sales tax here than I did previous. That's money in the Griffin's pocket for education and so forth. So we need to make sure that we maintain that self-reliance. And then the third, so please.
Okay, keep going. No, keep going. Keep going.
The third would be, our diversity, which the George Floyd tragedy and what's going on with the Black Lives Matters and police safety measures, and that's one piece, a major component. But beyond that, we have diversity issues in the sense of women in leadership of businesses, special needs populations. I have a special interest and special set of eyes. I have an adult son, autistic adult son, who's not going to be on a traditional college pathway, but he loves construction. He loves routine of work. There's all kinds of research. UPS has pretty much an error-free line of operations staffed by autistic adults. That's also part of our diversity we need to offer. And it goes on and on about how we can be an open work environment, and the race being one thing, but imagine being an autistic-friendly work environment, or whatever the special need may be. A lot of that, I'm using autism because I know a lot about it. It may be something as simple as training up your employees that, Jeff is working here, Jeff's autistic, so at the lunch hour, 22-year-old Jeff starts talking to you about trains, please don't shun him. It's just awkward in conversation. And that would be a real minor thing for that workplace to get beyond, so that the socialization can happen. Because we need everyone, we're going to need everyone. If we don't solve the diversity issues and build upon what Sioux Falls has already done, as the population grows, things can fester and get worse. But if we do it right now, we're going to benefit from that 20 and 30 years down the road. And I'm so happy when I hear, this defund the police on the national level. I'm not happy to hear that. When on the national level and some of these demands, Sioux Falls has been a leader in some of that activity. And that's not to say, and the mayor will be the first to tell you, we always have stuff to work on, but I've been so impressed with how the city leadership has I don't say a lot, has made way for the protests to happen, to allow people. We had the one incident, which was significant, but even that we dealt with. And it's very impressive to see.
Looking at those three challenges, and make sure I got them down right. You in sort of number one is workforce / education. You see that as kind of one subject. Two is maintaining our independence, and the third one is diversity. Mm-hmm. No matter how you look at diversity, all levels of diversity. On a little bit on the spot here, on a scale from 1 to 10, how good of a job are we doing to meet those challenges today?
Yeah, I guess it would depend on how you measure it, right? We hear that we're willing and open to diversity, but it's not necessarily reflected in the boardrooms, for using that as an example. So we need to be doing better. I say attitude-wise, we're 8 or 9, but getting progress probably middle of the road. The diversity, boy, I'll tell you, I can't say enough how impressed I've been with our education leaders, and willingness to provide programming and open-mindedness of programming that we can bring. So I really put that already at an 8 with room to grow. And then, you know, the advocacy from a Chamber of Commerce perspective, the maintaining our independence from government, that sort of thing, it doesn't mean in conflict with government, but it means that, you know, we're not gonna go back to charging us too much in the form of taxation. That's what I mean by that. We're really at a 9, I would think, in terms of commitment and funding, because we have this Ford Sioux Falls campaign that sees the importance of that. That's not every chamber that has the ability to fund 3 people in a public policy division and a lobbyist, and that's very important. As a community and as a state, using the Spanish speaking as an example, we have room to grow, room to be curious about one another's story. So many times I was hit with that being an immigration issue, and it never ever was. And from a state that, you know, is a rich heritage of multilingual, even its origin of different languages, that was disappointing to see. So we have some education to do in that area. We saw a transgender medication bill come through that was fairly controversial, but our role in that is we didn't want government getting involved in personal decisions. But we were on the phone with people that had opinions about that specific topic. The Chamber of Commerce's role was the invasion of government into our lives. We wanted that to remain separate. So I don't know if I've answered your question or not. I put that at we have room to grow, but it really is dependent upon the topic. Because diversity often, the conversation diversity often starts like, yeah, I'm for diversity, and then the conversation goes on, and well, not that. Let's just, you know, stop at that. But we need folks to be curious with one another's story and continue to learn.
Yeah, it's just about understanding the different perspectives that certainly exist.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you've been involved with chamber work now for many years. I know you've been involved, I think, at the national level to some degree with different committees you've been involved with. So you bring just a ton of great experience to this role. When you think about the challenges that our community is facing, and you look at how we're doing, probably relative to how good we need to be doing, what ideas have you gleaned from your previous experiences that you see bringing to the Sioux Falls or to the greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce?
Thanks. Yeah, so I thought about this question, and I'm gonna maybe answer it more, I don't know, philosophy of how I like to work, because my best role models have done things this way, and it's the way I try to conduct our business. And it really comes down to 3 things. So one is the world needs more of Jeff Griffin's actions and less of my opinions. Now, I'm just wrapping up an hour of giving you a lot of opinion, and I'm opinion oriented, but sometimes the best gift I can give a group is to keep my mouth shut at the time and then act. I get warned. First of all, my mind goes crazy if I offer too many opinions. I can't get everybody to agree with me. But action speaks louder than words. Real simple answer, right? And in doing so, I think we role model. At least have been role modeled for me, and those are the leaders I look up to. You mentioned the U.S. Chamber work, like everybody's business. You build a network, and U.S. and Chamber of Commerce work. That network happens to be local, state, national, and international. And it gives you a lot of examples you want to emulate and a lot of examples you don't necessarily want to emulate. And that can be good and bad. So for example, I saw some chambers come out guns blazing on the civil rights and this, that, and the other. And I know they believe what they're saying, but just the way they came out with a message, they set themselves, I don't know, they kind of got ahead of their ski tips a little bit and took some public criticisms about where you're going to put your money, where your mouth is. And I think we need to be a little more humble in that conversation because we have work to do as a Chamber of Commerce. And I know we have a willingness to do that work. It was discussed at my job interview, which was a good reason that I came, is the openness. It's a challenge. It's a challenge for sure, and especially when you're in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. If we're not addressing this diversity issue in the right way, it can set off some spirals. The other thing that I like to do in work is this may sound counterintuitive, but to expect nothing and accept everything. And that doesn't mean that I'm going to be a doormat for whatever you want to do. I'm going to have plans and goals and so forth. But what I mean is, if you've ever had an expectation going into grandma's house at Christmas that you're going to have this gloriful thing, and then the turkey's burnt and grandpa's over there yelling at people, and you're setting yourselves up for some failure, or an expectation. I've done this one where I feel like my board of directors is going to be more excited about an idea that I bring to them, and then they're not. I'm kind of like, ugh. So I try to make sure that my planning's right, but that I can't have the same expectations of the rest of the world that I have myself, and then to accept things as they change. Because chambers of commerce, when someone tells me, well, Jeff, I'm dropping out of the chamber because I'm not getting the value, in answering that question, I have a long answer when anybody wants to hear it, but chambers of commerce have a hard time owning projects because we bring a lot of ideas and get things going and get conversations started, and then businesses take that over, and the solutions are, you see them in the marketplace or in the classroom and so forth. And then we try to act humble, right? So that's a tough way to do this tangible stuff. You believe in something, but I'm not selling you, insurance or so forth of like you have to have it. So that's a good way. Leading with humility and a genuine heart, but with courage, I think is an obligation of a chamber of commerce. And of course, the struggle with humility is once you recognize being humble, you're not humble any longer. But what I mean by that is when you're having a conversation with someone and they're talking about what they do with such passion that they draw you into the conversation, you leave that conversation and you know that person's genuine. You just know that. At least I do. Take time to go back and let that person know that, because that's a contagious deal. And I love seeing interactions like that at the Chamber of Commerce. We've had to modify much of what we do because of the COVID, and one of the morning mingles are no longer live, and they've been in these Zoom groups. So we do a large group and then split up into smaller groups. And I was able to participate in one last week, and it was really, not everything's better on Zoom, but those were pretty cool to get to know people a little bit better and exchange stories. One gentleman on the story, his name escapes me right now, he's in the fire extinguisher business. And he was saying, yeah, like it wasn't interesting. Well, I was once involved in a fire where the fire extinguisher helped save the cabin we were in. And it's prompted me that we need to do fire extinguisher training here. So those trivial things all build to the greater good. And it's what we do as a Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah. We have maybe 2 minutes left, but how's the team at the Chamber doing? They are known by everybody, because they work for the chamber. They're at all the. How's the team over there doing?
I have been. I'm very impressed with the group of talent we have here. People are passionate about the community. They're raising their families here. They've been very patient with me in my first 6 months, so I'm very happy about that. But you hit the nail on the head when you work at the Chamber of Commerce. And we expect it. That's a 24-hour commitment to represent yourself well and to be a leader in the community. And we really have a strong team that does that.
Yeah, and they do an outstanding job representing the chamber, the city, and everybody knows who they are. They're friends of so many people in the city, and I appreciate you giving us a look into how they're doing, and wish them the best from us.
Okay.
Well, fellow Rotarians and guests, I want to thank CEO of the Greater Sioux Falls Chamber of Commerce, Jeff Griffin. Jeff, I want to thank you for joining us today, giving us a passionate look into your views and how you intend to lead not only the chamber, but lead in the city of Sioux Falls as a leader. So thank you for being with us, and I look forward to many more interactions in the future. Thank you.
You're welcome.